together now. Oh, yeah. I was saying that I was going to show the guy on.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Epic Fail Was Darwin Wrong? We're glad you came tonight. We are Maranatha Christian Fellowship and International Student Outreach, and I am Pastor Parnell Mahoney, an alumni here at the university. And tonight's presentation, you have come to the second one in our three-part series on campus. Tonight is What Do Fossils Say About Evolution? Nothing, Rocks Don't Talk. So that's our title. We're all on the edge of our seats to find out what Dave has to say if the fossils say nothing. But that's what you came to. We have an information table over here. We encourage you to check it out. All the stuff there is free. And we have another presentation on campus, like I said, tomorrow night. And we'll talk more about that title later. But if you want a flyer for that, if you don't have a flyer, they're on that table if you want to take a reminder and check out, maybe come back tomorrow night. And also Dave and Mary Jo, our speakers, have some materials here that are just for viewing, but not for taking unless you want to buy them. But they do recommend these things. You could buy them, you could look at them, and if you like them, you can buy them from them or buy them online. But you're free to check out these items too. So why are we doing this presentation? You've heard the expression, we are all stardust. Have you guys heard that? It's kind of a cool expression. So while that expression is actually a nod to evolutionary assumptions, like we came from stars, right? It's used by some people as an attempt to ascribe us with lofty origins, right? So you can tell it's kind of a double saying where it's like a nod to evolutionary assumptions and also, hey, but you guys are important, you're special, you're stardust, right? But we believe there's another explanation that points to our supreme origins and our value and our destiny. And that's as follows. For example, for in 6 days, the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. Hi, welcome. And then the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground. And he breathed the breath of life into the man's nostrils, and the man became a living being. It also says, then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So you can see that in our culture, and according to the paradigm of evolution, we're told that you're just a product of time, chance, and accident of natural processes. And while being stardust sounds kind of nice, it really means that you have no intrinsic value, right? And there's no real meaning, no real truth. But we would like to propose to you that there actually is, that you're actually created in the image of a real, living, eternal, all-powerful God. And that's why this subject's important to us. So I'll get off my soapbox. Our presentation tonight, I think, is an hour and 15 minutes. We'll see. If Dave gets talking too fast, I might give him another 15 minutes just so he doesn't explode from over-caffeination or something. After the presentation, there's going to be a Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, that will be the time for that. If you'd like to ask questions, actually more questions than comments. Comments if you want to wait till the end when we're done with the presentation, maybe. So a little bit about Dave and Mary Jo. They live in Grand Junction, Colorado, and that's where Dave is originally from. They both enjoy hiking, and Dave is an avid fly fisherman. And Mary Jo is from Mankato here in Minnesota, about an hour and a half south of here, southwest. And Mary Jo enjoys time with her grandkids. Both Mary Jo and Dave are former evolutionists who have carefully studied the scientific issues and became convinced of the truth of creation. They are founders of Alpha Omega Institute and have been teaching creation science for nearly 40 years. They have advanced degrees, Dave in mathematics and geology, and Mary Jo in biology with a science education emphasis. Both have taught at the high school and the college level. These presentations are being recorded. They're available on Zoom live as we present them. And if you're curious about seeing last night's presentation on biology, tonight's or tomorrow night's, or you want to share it with a friend or whatever, just talk to me, or you can sign up on our sign up sheet and indicate that that's the reason you signed up, if that's the only reason. Otherwise, we'd love to have you check out our other activities. So without further ado, tonight's presentation, please welcome David Nutty.
Thank you, Cornell. Is that working? Good. All right, so yes, what do the fossils say about evolution? We're going to be looking at that. The first thing I want to do this evening is not necessarily get right into the fossil lecture. What I want to do is at least give you an idea of what we've covered yesterday a little bit, so because it all fits together, okay? And so what did we talk about yesterday? Well, Mary Jo gave the presentation yesterday, and basically it was talking about the biological proofs for evolution, and the evidence cries out design. So one of the big things she talked about was design, wasn't it? We talk about how the bombardier beetle can shoot fire by mixing chemicals together, and you have to have all of the apparatus in place and working in order for this thing to work. All right. And to us, to me, that's an evidence that that was design. A tight interrelationship of parts all functioning in order to produce this explosion. Okay. So you need chemicals, yes, but you also have to have all the other apparatus. Mary Jo also mentioned something regarding the woodpecker. And we find out that the woodpecker has an amazing design. And one of the things that is really important is that it has a tongue 4.5 times longer than his beak, in order to be able to put that tongue down into the tunnels of a tree to get the insects that is going after. Now, the problem is, how do you store that long of a tongue? And here is the storage compartment, comes out of the back of the mouth, wraps all the way around the skull, attaches up in here, and then there are muscles that pull it back on down into the chest cavity, and it's elastic like a rubber band. All of these things working together to produce a working woodpecker, okay? So we see evidence of design, but every one of the things that we might mention is design. Whether you're talking about the bombardier beetle or the woodpecker, or even the DNA, which is like a master computer operating system, okay? When you actually look at that, you find out that, or our brains. The answer for the design is, oh, it wasn't designed. It came about by slow and gradual modifications. And in fact, here's what you normally hear from a group that call themselves naturalists. These are people who think they have to explain everything by natural processes and only natural processes. No God whatsoever involved in this whole situation. And so naturalism would actually try to explain away any of those ideas of design by coming up with some kind of natural explanation. And so they would say, we can imagine how mutations in natural selection acting over millions of years might refine certain systems. It sounds really good, but the word imagine and might are not scientific terms. We just have to understand that, okay? Are you with me on that? They're not scientific terms, but it is a way to be able to try to say, well, maybe there's a way, perhaps. Again, those are not scientific terms either. And so when we look at that, I feel uncomfortable with saying everything maybe, perhaps, it could have, etc. I want some hardcore stuff. All right, well, mutations with natural selections, that's the buzzword. That's what you hear all the time at the university, isn't it? The buzzword of mutation and natural selection. We might call that the primary axiom of how evolution proceeds, okay? But Dr. John Sanford, who's one of the top genetic researchers in the country, would have said it this way: it doesn't work. Okay, that primary axiom does not work, and he has in this book right here. This one, he gives you the hardcore data showing you why it does not work. Okay, and this guy is not just any old guy off the street. He is a retired Cornell University professor, genetic researcher. He has about 25 patents under his belt, 70 peer-reviewed articles. That was several years ago. He is also the co-inventor of the gene gun process, which is what was used to sequence the DNA. So he's not a slouch when it comes to these fields, and his research in what he called genetic entropy, how things are going downhill, getting worse, not better. And he basically, in this book, shows how evolution cannot work by mutation, natural selection. It's going the wrong way. It's going downward. And that's something you might need to know. But this whole idea of naturalism is a belief system, a belief that you have to explain everything without a God. Okay? Why? Well, that's just how they set it up, right? I choose not to participate in that. Okay, just so you know, because if the data leads me to a creator, that's where I'm going to go. I can see that. That was part of what Mary Jo talked about. The other part of what Mary Jo talked about yesterday was some of the best proofs for evolution and how they fail. Okay, like for instance, you might see Darwin's famous finches. You can see antibiotic-resistant bacteria, peppered moths, and Mary Jo explained those yesterday. But you know, all of those changes that we call evolution and is referred to as evolution in our classrooms can be explained by no more than Mendelian genetics. Okay, that's all. Recombination of what is already there in the genetic pool. So you can look at that and you know Punnett squares and how you can get all these different traits, and we can apply that to even human. How do we get all the different skin colors from white is white to black is black? Starting with two people? Huh? How do you do that? Well, guess what? We can actually see it from right here. You can get black is black from parents of medium skin to white is white. One generation. He said, wait a minute, you never see that, do you? Well, actually you do. Here are some twins right here. One black, one white. Mendelian genetics is what it is. Here's another set of twins right here. Who would ever think they were twins? But they were. They are twins, okay? And but you can see if you have the right combination of medium skin, you can get all the skin colors. Black is black, white is white. It doesn't take millions of years to do that. And so here's another claim. Humans and chimps share 99% roughly of their DNA. They're quite similar, right? Well, actually, that was false. It is false. In fact, that number began to come down when we started looking at more of the DNA instead of just small segments of it. When they looked at more DNA, they realized that number was like 93%. Then all of a sudden, they started looking at other aspects, and they found out it was somewhere closer to, I'm going to say, 89%. And if you take into consideration what they were calling junk DNA, which isn't junk, by the way, okay? When they took that into consideration, that number went clear down to 71% similar only. That means there's a lot of difference still genetically, DNA of humans and chimps. Okay, is it junk? We first been hearing about junk DNA. So many percent, like 97.5% of your DNA is junk. And they would say that's left over for millions of years of evolutionary development. Sounds good, doesn't it? Turns out we predicted we're going to find out it's not junk. It's not junk. That's what we were predicting way back when. It turns out exactly what it was. Here's Dr. John Sanford. it's becoming increasingly clear that most or all of the genome is functional. Then the research started coming out. The Encomes Project published a bunch of papers in 2012. And basically, here's what they found. This metaphor of junk isn't that useful. All right. And that's 300 genetic researchers from around the world, not just a couple, and secular people as well. All right. They found out that almost every nucleotide is associated with a function. It had an important function, in fact. Some of the functions would be regulating embryological development. You wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the stuff they call junk DNA, okay? And so Discover Magazine, committed to naturalism, said the key point is it's not junk. Okay, it's not junk, the stuff called junk DNA. All right, and then there was a 2021 article, Human Genome 20th Anniversary Junk DNA hits the trash. Okay, it's not junk. So many technical articles that you can look at that tell you the very same thing. Okay, tell you that, and amazing evidence of design as well coming out. So tonight, what I want to really start focusing in on is one of my areas of specialty, now that I just talked about Mary Jo's, okay, is a fossil record. Now, I was going to be a paleontologist studying fossils, specifically dinosaurs, and I wanted to become Dinosaur Dave. Well, now I am Dinosaur Dave, but it's because of age. Okay, but by the time I was about 14, I already found 2 different skeletal remains of dinosaurs. Okay, one was an Allosaurus, another one was a Stegosaurus. And I found bits and parts and pieces of many, many other fossils in Western Colorado and into Utah. And so I was well on my way to becoming Dinosaur Dave and loving fossils, but also 100% committed to evolution at that time. Okay, I thought evolution was a proven fact way back then. And why? Because that's all I'd ever been taught. I never heard anything else. And so anyhow, what do the fossils say about evolution? Nothing. Like we said, rocks don't talk. We talk for them. We look for bits and pieces of evidence and then try to come up with a good story. That's what happens frequently, isn't it? And so we talk for them. All right. Darwin himself said that geology does not support his theory. Why? Because the fossils aren't there, he said. But his solution was keep digging. You should be able to find those fossils. Keep digging. Well, we've been doing a lot of digging. All right. Now we have over 1 billion fossils. Problem is, we don't have the fossils necessary to support evolution. That's plain truth. Okay. But anyhow, that's what he said. This is Niles Eldredge said it this way: 120 years of paleontological research later, guess what? The fossil record still doesn't support his theory. He said, and nor is the problem, he says, a miserably poor record. The fossil record simply shows that this prediction is wrong. And he still believes in evolution, doesn't he? That's Niles Eldredge. But the prediction is wrong. Anyhow, I like what he continues with a little bit. The observation that species are amazingly conservative and static entities throughout long periods of time has all the qualities of the emperor's new clothes. Everyone knew it, but preferred to ignore it. Paleontologists faced with a recalcitrant record, obstinately refusing to yield Darwin's predicted pattern, simply looked the other way. So we'll be taking some questions a little bit later, okay? Thank you. All right, but keep that one on the back of your mind. All right, So anyhow, when we look at that, I wanted to know something here. The missing links are still missing. Okay, that's why they're called missing links, of course. Here is Arrow White, who specializes in paleontology, writing in the magazine called Evolution. He says evolution requires intermediate forms between species, but paleontology, the study of fossils, does not provide them.
Looks like it's David Kitts.
What? What pronoun?
Sorry, you said Errol White, says David Kitts.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's David
It's being
Kitts.
recorded, so I thought it.
Thank you.
Go
That
on,
is
JT.
David Kitts and that one. Now let's get to Arrow White, okay? Arrow White says, but whatever ideas authorities may have on the subject, the lungfishes. You have to understand, lungfish is your great granddaddy according to evolution, okay? But lungfishes, like every other major group of fishes that I know, have their origins firmly based on nothing. Then, as a evolutionist, he said, I have often thought how little I should like to have to prove organic evolution in a court of law. He knows he'd be torn apart if he tried to prove that, okay? Anyhow, when we look at the dinosaur record, there are no links leading up to all the major type of dinosaurs. Nothing leading up to them. There should be, okay? But all of a sudden, what do we have? Here's how it's supposed to branch off. Notice how many fossils they found. 0, 0, 0, 0, all the way on the end. Oh, here now we have them all right there, but nothing leading up to them. And who is saying this, by the way? He is the lead editor of the Encyclopedia Reference of the Dinosauria. Lead editor. That's what he's saying. Well, he continued here. In an interview, he says, alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. Kind of sad, isn't it? Doesn't have them. All right. Now, what convinces me and others of evolution? Way back when, what convinced me? It was not the evidence, I'll tell you that much. When I was in 4th or 5th grade, I was teaching on a television program. And by that time, I had not studied all of the evidences, did I? But I was sold out to evolution. I was at that point. And what convinced me of evolution? Pictures like this, which I now call great artwork. And then I ask the question, what's the evidence? It turns out you might hear this in a book, that how one animal turns into another one, turns into this one, turns finally into a mouse. Okay? And but the problem is it's wrong. The missing links are still missing. Yes, you have this one, yes, you have that one, but nothing in between. Okay? That is a problem for evolution. And it's not that we don't have enough fossils. I already told you we had 1 billion of them already. Actually, 1.2 or 1.3 billion fossils. And only a few dubious links. Only a few. All right. So the prediction that you might have if evolution is true would be you find a lot of those links, but I'm saying no, you don't. If you have this lowest life changing into more and more complex life, here's one of the other things. You should see the lowest life being very simple. And then it gets more and more complex. And you should see this evidence of constant change in the fossil record. All right. So let's go to the museum. Denver Museum shows you the Cambrian explosion exhibit. Okay? That's the Cambrian explosion. And they would say 545 million, I'm going to say evolutionary years ago, there was an explosion of life, and all the different body shapes and plans, get this word, what they're using, popped into existence. Guess what? That's not Darwinian evolution. All right, slow and gradual changes over long periods of time. But I added a word here, 545 million evolutionary years ago. And the reason I added that word is evolution needs time. Absolutely. Billions and billions of years. I believe if there's a creator who created the creatures, he can get the job done. He doesn't need those millions of years. That's my own perspective, okay? And so I'm going to be adding that word evolutionary years ago. All right, now, I said the life forms down in the bottom should be simple, but they're not. We find things like trilobites way down there, but look at the eye of the trilobite right here. That's not simple. It's extremely complex. Now they found another type of an eye. It looks like the squash eye of a robber fly clear down in the Cambrian with the trilobites as well. Now, wait a minute. It looks just like robber fly eyes, but it can't be a robber fly eye. Do you know why? Because according to the theory of evolution, insects didn't evolve for another 200 million years. So they shouldn't be around. So what is this? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but it looks like an eye, but definitely very complex, isn't it? Now they found in one of these fossils, they're down in the Cambrian, they took a scan of the brain of the thing. It was that well preserved, you can see where the brain would be, and let's see what it's going to look like. And then they found a brain scan, and it's exactly the same pattern as the same creature that is living today. Okay? Same pattern. All right, now, as we go on, how do you get a brain according to naturalism? Here's what they say. Perhaps an early cell billions of years ago developed a sensitivity to other cells. Then it is conceived to be on its way to becoming a human. Two words, not scientific. The perhaps inconceivable. That's a guess, isn't it? Don't know that. And so we just have to understand that. That's part of naturalism right there. So these first 2 points are not true. We don't see that evolution needs. What about this constant change? Here's a fossil you can pick up on the beaches today. There's its fossil counterpart right there, okay? And then when you look at that, there's a ginkgo leaf and a sassafras leaf identical to the fossils we have. No evolutionary change there, right? It seems to be pretty solid. We find pine cones and dragonflies absolutely the same as what we have today. And this is supposedly over 140 million evolutionary years. There should be more change than that, okay? There's a thing called genetic drift. We look at fossil insects. Guess what? It's like studying insects living today. Insects living today. Isn't that something? Yep. I like the Stanford Museum one. The first sharks, listen to this. The first sharks evolved 450 million evolutionary years ago. Sharks have changed very little over the years. Wouldn't you expect some change over 450 million years? In fact, they found one of these sharks that was still living, still swimming, and it's unchanged from the fossils from way back in the fossil record, way back, same sort of thing. Now they found fish clear down in the Cambrian, but we know that as a fish, a vertebrate, advanced eyes, blood vessel, gills, digestive system, muscular swimming. It was a fish. And yet things didn't change much, number one, and extreme complexity clear down there in the Cambrian too, isn't it? You have both of those. All right. The coelacanth was thought to have been extinct for about 65 million years, okay? Until the fishermen off the coast of Madagascar brought some in. And they found out not only is it still living, but it's unchanged from the fossil record clear back into, let's say 400 and some million years, evolutionary years, unchanged again. And what they used to call the proto leg of the coelacanth or the lungfish getting ready to crawl out on land. Turns out when they did the research, it's 100% fin. Nothing in between. It's not ever used to pull themselves up on land for that guy right there. All right, woodpeckers are woodpeckers. And by the way, if you see a feather in the fossil record, you certainly can recognize that. Okay, because yes, if the fine sediment, if you have fine enough sediment, you can see exactly feathers in the structure. Bats have always been bats. They found over 1,000 bats. Not one intermediate, not one thing leading up to a bat. Interesting, isn't it? And a hummingbird's the same way. It's they found a fossil hummingbird, and the gentleman writing this article said the amazing thing about this fossil, it's essentially a modern hummingbird. My mind is a little blown. Hummingbirds are hummingbirds, okay? I love this one. Where the whole hovering tribe came from remains up in the air. So again, this kind of confuses some of the paleontologists, doesn't it? Now they found a lizard in amber from about the time of the dinosaurs, but guess what? We have that very same species living today. Unchanged from what we can tell. Same thing. So constant change? No, we're not seeing them. Those are the main predictions you might make about the fossil record from an evolutionary perspective. Everyone is no. What we do see is what? Complexity everywhere. Yep. Things staying put, stasis, not a lot of change, and distinct kinds. All of this fits with the creation, the fall, and then the flood as an explanation of how you get those fossils. Okay, it all fits. And all right, so let's keep on going. And by the way, we see distinct kinds. Genesis chapter 1. God created things after their own kind, repeated 10 times, not one kind changing into another kind. Now, the Bible is not a science textbook, but when it touches on science, it's accurate. It's amazing, okay? Here's a big problem for evolution. They've been starting to find soft tissue in fossils, including petrified dinosaur bone, soft tissue. Now, some of you may have had the opportunity to converse with Dr. Mark Armitage. I don't know if he did or not. Okay, didn't get a chance to. He was here in Minneapolis. All right, but he was talking about soft tissue in not only T-Rex, soft tissue with Triceratop horns, other soft tissue, and sure enough, this is actually soft tissue. Okay, and when you actually look at it, it is not biofilm, it's actual tissue. I can verify that myself because when I was young, I used to cut and polish a lot of petrified dinosaur bone, a lot of it, okay? And once in a while I'm grinding or sanding to get a good polish on it, when I'm doing that, all of a sudden I would get, ooh, rotten egg smell. Do you realize what I was grinding? I didn't. I was grinding through dinosaur rotting soft tissue. And I didn't even know it. And that was regularly that would happen. Okay. And this, all the rest of it may be agatized. Okay. Agatized, silicon dioxide replacing the cells, but still have an element of soft tissue. I didn't realize that. Mary Schweitzer was working with Dr. Jack Horner, one of the paleo, let's say, fossil dinosaur experts, okay, pretty well known. And she was doing cross sections of it and looking at it under the microscope, and has a forceps there. I found out, wait a minute, that looks like soft tissue. And she took that little thing and started wiggling it. Whoa, this soft tissue wiggles, okay? And so it's actual soft tissue. She called Jack Horner over, the paleontologist, and said, Jack, look at this. Jack looks at it, staring at it on the microscope. He's going, This is what he was doing. Well, Jack, what do you make of it? You know what Jack Horner told her? Well, I don't know, he said, but I can tell you one thing, those creationists are going to love you. Why? The very idea of soft tissue in dinosaur shows you those dinosaurs probably didn't live that long ago. How can you preserve that kind of soft tissue over 180 million years? How are you going to do it? They tried some experiments to find out, well, maybe it was a presence of iron, so they used concentrated hemoglobin. And sure enough, they could preserve some tissue for 2 years. Problem, 2 years is a long ways from 150 million years, isn't it? Yeah, it's a little extrapolation, and that probably doesn't work. And they said, well, it was the iron that was present that might have allowed soft tissue to be able to be what? Preserved until today. Except a lot of those fossils had no iron involved. And in the experimentation, what they had to do was bury that quickly and deeply enough and keep water away from it. Here's a problem. How do you get all that stuff preserved and bury it quickly unless it's a water burial? Okay. And in fact, every one of those dinosaur fossils they were looking at are either what they call fluvial deposits or at least water deposit and mud. That's what it's found in. And some of it is waterwork volcanic ash, called frequently the bentonite of the Morrison Formation. Okay, that's what they found in, but it's all water in there. It's not just dinosaurs they found soft tissue in either. All right. I'm going to go back here. Soft tissue in dinosaur. Mary Schweitzer started to try to get his or her data published. Couldn't find a publisher to take it for a long time. Okay. And she wrote, I had one reviewer tell me that he didn't care what the data said. He knew what I was finding wasn't possible. Soft tissue in dinosaur preserved over millions of years. Okay. I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said, none. Don't trouble me with the facts, ma'am. My mind is made up. Basically what he's saying. All right. And that we see that all the time. People ignoring what the data says, and the data might be saying something totally different than what we've been taught. Okay.
And Dr. Schweitzer was an evolutionist, right?
That was Schweitzer that was working with Jack Horner. Okay, that was Mary Schweitzer. Yeah, thank you. All right, now they found a petrified salamander. Guess what? It had soft tissue, including its dinner and nerves and organs preserved. Here's a list of a whole bunch of animals with soft tissue. Okay. Yeah, she's telling me. He's telling me to get over here. All right.
The camera, he's off the camera.
I don't want to get off the camera. Well, you don't need me. Soft tissue, all kinds of them now coming up, not just a few. Now that list is expanded to over 100 easily, and they're finding more soft tissue in fossils as we speak, probably. Okay. Now, how old are these things? Well, I don't know. Here's one right here. Soft tissue in this Cambrian, supposedly greater than 500 million years old in that particular fossil right there. That's a 2019 publication. Right? People are starting to keep their eyes peeled for those things, okay? They're looking for them, and sure enough, finding them in all kinds of different fossils. That is a big issue for evolutionary teaching, you might say. Well, that was me when I was on that television program, teaching how the study of geology, the study of rocks, and especially dinosaurs, how they proved evolution. And that's because that's all I had ever been taught, was an evolutionary perspective. And going out on the desert, looking for fossils, especially dinosaurs, I would then find and try to compare what I was finding with some of the textbooks at that young age as well. Okay, and guess what? I got a steady dose of evolution along with those textbooks. Okay, I did. I thought evolution was a proven fact. It wasn't until my wife found this book in a secondhand bookstore for 5 cents. Evolution, the fossils say no. All right. Later, that was updated a number of years later. Evolution, the fossils still say no. Okay. And so that tells you something. Who wrote it? Dr. Duane Gish. Okay. And I thought he was crazy when I saw that book. Okay. I would have dismissed it right away, but I read it. Amazing. And the more I read it, the more I said, either he's got a good point or he's absolutely nuts. I better start doing my own research instead of just accepting everything I've been taught. And as I did my own research, you might say after a while, I evolved from an evolutionist into a creationist. All right. And it didn't take a million years. Okay. Close, but not much. All right. Wait a minute. I'm saying the fossils don't support evolution, but you might say, wait a minute. I saw pictures, lots of them, shown in textbooks showing evolution. I remember that, right? That's right. What you saw were pictures. You're looking at artwork. That's what I was looking at when I was younger too. Like for instance, artwork like that, showing how the horse, dawn horse, called the Eohippus, evolves into present day modern horse. Taken how many millions of years? 60 million years to do it, according to this. Okay, wait a minute, look how good the artist made it look. A lot of spots, fewer spots, no spots. You don't know anything from fossils, do you? You can't tell if it had spots. There's a problem with the teeth structure. How do you go from here to here without transitions? Problem with the foot structure. The number of pair of ribs go back and forth. But you don't know that until you actually study the fossils and see the actual evidence here. And here's a kicker for evolution. You would expect the bones of modern day horse on the top of the rock layers, his supposed ancestors way down below. Well, now, in a couple of places, John Day Country in Oregon, also now in South America, they found the bones of present-day horse in rock layers at and below his supposed ancestors. You can't be your own grandmother. So this is a problem for the evolutionary perspective here. All right. And by the way, that little guy right there, his correct scientific name is Hyracotherium. And we have living Hyracotheriums today. All right, here's one. Lives in Israel. It's about the size of a rabbit. How would you like to put a saddle on that beast, Daryl? You think that'll get you down the road very far? Not really. Okay, yeah, again, this perspective doesn't work. And nice artwork there. This is out of a textbook that was used in 3rd grade, teaching evolution, 3rd grade. And it showed how the lobe-finned fish, like the coelacanth, crawled out of the ocean and turned into the amphibians, later into you. All right. Now, when you see a picture like that, a 3rd grader needs to ask a question, but they don't. A 3rd grader should ask the question, great artwork, what's the evidence? Okay, what's the evidence for that? Okay, what is the evidence for that? That would be the question you would need to ask, and turns out nothing was found. Not one intermediate at the time that book was written. But think about it. Now they've had 7 candidates for the transition from fish to amphibian. Everyone has fizzled. The latest one is Tiktaalik, all right? Oh, and that's the latest one that they have, okay? Oh, by the way, here's what the caption to that picture actually read in the kids' textbook. Transitional forms or missing links show how the process of evolution Fifth place. Your college students. Something wrong there? How can something missing show anything? Okay, haven't found them. All right, so what about Tiktaalik? Okay, and here's an evolutionary statement: thick wrist bones. Oh, they're talking about, wait a minute, time out. That's not a wrist bone, that was a fin bone. Why call it a wrist bone? Unless somebody's trying to get a little more mileage for evolution. It wasn't. And by the way, this was actually used in a debate against the creationists a number of years back. But the creationists should have known that, and I think he did, but just didn't bring it out. But by the time he used it in the debate, this has already been dismissed as the transition. The reason for it is they were digging in another area, and they found in a layer older than where this one was found, a trackway of four-footed creatures crisscrossing back and forth. Well, wait a minute, this was supposed to be the link that started them going to develop legs, but they haven't yet gotten the back legs. And so, wait a minute, you have four-footed creatures before the creature that's going to evolve into the four-footed creature. And they're leaving these tracks. By the way, here's what was said, Jennifer Clark, University of Cambridge. We thought we pinned down the origin of limb tetrapods. We have to rethink the whole thing. What I said. All right. Evolution is taught at very young ages, and we sometimes think evolution is proven. We get to college, we already have that. Oh, we know evolution is true. Okay. I've heard people say that. I've had fifth graders tell me, oh, I've seen pictures in my textbook showing human evolution, so it has to be true. Or I saw the textbook and my teacher said it was true too. That's one kid was pretty defiant that way. What do you mean? It's not true. Okay. Here's a fourth grade publication used in the public schools. And grade 4, unit 4 lesson shows how a dog-like creature eventually evolved into whales. Wow, that's great artwork, isn't it? Well, let's examine that evidence just a little bit. How about that guy right there? What did they find? You know, it is great artwork, but did they find that particular thing? And the answer is no. All they found were 2 small shreds of a jaw. This piece right here, this little lump right in here, put together with white matrix. Not quite enough evidence to get that whole skull. And by the way, they didn't find any tail, no legs, no backbone. Artwork convinces people that evolution is true, not necessarily the evidence, until you start asking that question. All right, that was that one. Next one in the line was Pakicetus. This was on the front cover of Science magazine, April 1983. Looks pretty good, right? But again, it's great artwork. When you see great artwork, you ask the question, what's the evidence? Okay, but what's the evidence for that guy? Here it is. You have to go to a different book to see the evidence. And there you see one bone at the back of the skull, one patch of jaw, and a couple teeth. Let you in on a secret, that was all they found. They didn't find any backbone, no tail, no legs. Not quite enough information to get that great artwork, is it? And but the picture convinced a lot of people of evolution, right? Of whale evolution in this particular case. Look at what they say here. Bones prove whale walked. Time out. How could something without legs prove anything walked? Doesn't fit, does it? All right. This is the, now they found more bones. They think this might be what he looked like. All right. So which is the correct model? I wonder. Was it this model in 1983 or is it the 2004 model? We don't know. We really don't, because these fossils don't come with a picture. And the fossil is a rock. It doesn't talk. It can't say, this is what I look like at all. And so we talk for it, don't we? So we're not quite sure, but this is basically the picture they'll show you in most of the modern textbooks. And we'll teach that is the ancestor. Okay, that's Pachycetus. Next one on the line, Ambulocetus. Ah, look at that, great artwork. Great artwork here. What's the evidence? Well, they show you a skeleton. You go to the museum, you see a whole skeleton too, don't you? You see it, you see a whole skull. And if you were to order the skull from the museum that actually has the real one on display, it'll look like this. You will think, oh, they found the whole skull. Guess what? They didn't. In fact, here is a interview, and you can see it on a video if you wish to do it, on Ambulocetus. And Dr. Hans Theissen says it this way: we didn't find the important features here. You have to notice two colors here. One is what they found. The other, especially where the blowhole would be, is gone. They never found that. And look at that number of teeth. It's all light colored silver. And by the way, only 2 teeth were found right there. They didn't find the rest of it. They didn't find most of a good share of that jaw. Look at this. They didn't find all this stuff either. Okay, so that's Ambulocetus. Here's what they found. Not enough information to get that. Notice they didn't find any of the flippers, did they? They didn't find the tail going into the flute. None of that was found. Interesting. Okay, let's go up the line here. Rhodocetus. Okay, here's Rhodocetus. Here's the great artwork. Notice they thought he was on land a lot, but now his back legs are turning into flippers, etc. Guess what they didn't find? The legs, the tail, the flute. They found nothing of this thing here. Only this piece here and a little bit of the skull right there. Rhodocetus. Okay. All right, let's go up. When we look at all of these things, I'm not going to go into all these details of each of them, but look at this. This is what they're teaching. In fact, this is University of Berkeley. And here's the same type of pictures that we see. So the kids in 4th grade are getting that. The university students are getting that as well. Okay. Here's something that kind of precipitated some of their thinking that maybe whales evolved from land animals. In some of these fossils and living whales, they noticed a few little bones in here. And they said, aha, those are leftover bones from when the whale used to walk on land on 4 legs. Leftover legs. I don't quite see a leg there. Okay. But as you see, it's leftover. Well, this particular article comes from the University of Southern California news release. They found a use for those bones. They found out, no, they're not leftovers, not leftover legs at all. These are important bones in the sexuality of the whale. Very important, necessary thing in order for reproduction. All right. And so that's the article. Researchers turn a long accepted evolutionary assumption on its head. That was the article. You can look it up if you want. How many have heard that dinosaurs evolved into birds? Raise your hand. Yeah, there's some of you. Okay. Well, that's what's being taught today. And it's being taught to the youngest children. Yeah, you look at little kids' books, what are they showing you? Oh, wonderful picture of a dinosaur totally clad in feathers. Now, I have no problem with T-Rex having a wonderful headdress of feathers, gorgeous feathers. I have no problem with that, except I don't want to put a feather on him unless the evidence really indicates it, okay? I'd be a little bit shy of doing that. All right, but here's National Geographic. Look at that nice feathered dinosaur here. Wow, great artwork. Did they find the evidence? Turns out, no, they didn't. I like what they said here. Stores Olson says it this way. He was the top bird expert, Smithsonian Institute. And he said he accused the magazine of engaging in sensationalistic, unsubstantiated, tabloid journalism. Clearly, he wrote, the magazine is not receiving competent consultation in certain scientific matters. And then it goes on, he's especially maddened by or galled by the societies, that's National Geographic's assertion, that a wide variety of dinosaurs definitely wore feathers. He said this is just a blankety blank lie. The public deserves to know this. There's not one dinosaur with feathers found. That's what he said back then. All right. Alan Fiducia said it this way. When they put that feathered dinosaur on the cover last year, I threw 30 years worth of magazines out of my house. National Geographic's journalism is a joke. All right. And he's one of the top experts on dinosaurs and bird fossils. Okay. Anyhow, then he says the hair-like filaments that accompany some fossils come from beneath the skin. I can duplicate the effect by skinning the tail of a modern lizard. Okay. He's ticked. Okay. He really is. He's one of the top bird experts. Well, go open the National Geographic and you find pictures like this. It shows the fossil and here's what he looked like. And of course, most of you people looking at that magazine, adults included, will say, oh, yes, that's what they found. That's what he looked like. I guess dinosaurs must have evolved into birds. Okay, problem? That was a hoax. In fact, here's the article. It came out later, and it showed how that guy actually was put together from multiple fossils and then sold at a museum, and a museum picked it up. Okay, again, 5 different fossils put together as a composite to come up with this particular one, and they were able to prove it. All right, and but there was a little retraction in scientific or in National Geographic, but not much. Okay, but that was one of them. Then others fell out of the sky too. These are National Geographic pictures. And then you can see the hair-like filaments. They're not feathers. We know what a feather looks like from the fossil record, especially how fine that sediment was where these guys were preserved. Okay, here's another one. Last April, Nature published a paper by Kevin Padian. He's one of them pushing the dinosaur to bird evolution. He's from Berkeley, California, Berkeley. It was a fossil of a pterosaur with a tail from the same fossil deposit where Archaeoraptor was found. That's the other hoax. He said, Zeus says the tail was added by a local resident before selling it to a Chinese museum. All right, another one fell out of the sky now. Okay, and so we look at that. National Geographic also shows you the path of the birds. Now look at this. It shows how a leg got more and more feathery. See this? More and more feathery until it finally turned into a wing and the creature took off and flew. Sounds really good. Then they show you the path to birds from dinosaurs. Looks good. I think they've got a sewed up case, don't you? At least if you look at the pictures and what they're saying. But they didn't find it in that order. That is a big problem. All right, here is the real order of where they found these fossils. Find fossils flying around where they're supposed to be, not the fossils itself, but the birds. And they're up here at the top of the column. You go down here to the middle of where the dinosaurs were. Wait a minute, there's a true bird there too. This is called a Mesozoic kiwi by most people. What true birds even before the dinosaurs? Can't be your own grandmother, right? That's a real problem. But what does Kevin Badian say from the University of California, Berkeley? He said, ah, no problem. We don't always get everything in the fossil record in perfect order. Guess what? It is a problem, all right? Definitely is a problem. And all right. So, question, did dinosaurs evolve into birds? Looks good. They say it is, but I'm gonna say no, it wasn't. Here's an article, last one. They found a theropod dinosaur that's supposed to be evolving into birds with 3 birds in its stomach. What does that mean? They weren't evolving into birds, they were eating the birds. Okay, so the birds are already there. And a lot of people don't know it, but now they have found fossils of modern animals, such as sandpipers, that's a bird, loons, bird, ducks, flamingos, cormorants, albatross, parrots, owls, ducks, all this stuff found in dinosaur layers. I never knew that until I started studying it again. And now, sure enough, this is right out of a Dr. Carl Berner's book. But right now, what do we see here? All of these things are found in dinosaur rock layers. That doesn't fit what I was taught about evolution through all those years of being an evolutionist myself. And in the area of human evolution, we see a lot of artwork as well. In fact, you see Uncle Harry himself teaching you about evolution. There he is. And when you see a picture like this, say, what's the evidence? Great artwork. So what is the evidence, say, for that guy right there? Let's look at that. What's the evidence for that one? Turns out, here he is right there. Here's the evidence, just the skull cap. All that was found. All the rest of this skull was added for your viewing enjoyment. They did not find that. Okay, and so much for that. Now, I was actually speaking in a public school one time in California, and I showed, for that guy, I showed what they actually found. Their textbook showed everything instead of the dark color here and the light color. Their textbook showed it all as one color, as though they found the whole thing. And when I showed them that all they found was a skull cap, they were ready, these high school students were ready to burn their textbooks. I should have let them, okay? I should have let them, but I didn't. Yeah, they were really ticked that they were led to believe in something that wasn't true. False data, okay? So, second grade book used in the Colorado area. And it shows what? Mr. Ramapithecus, a man-ape, was not a real man. What was he? Half ape, half man, right? That's what it looks like. All right. Wait a minute, that's great artwork. What's the evidence for that? All they had at that time were 2 small shreds of a jaw. That's all they had. And from that, they got Mr. Ramapithecus and his family in there. It's the artwork that convinces so many people that evolution is true, not the actual evidence. Now they have more bones for this guy, and they realize he was nothing but an ape, strictly an ape, that's all. Okay, that's what they noticed. Okay, this is in the newspapers in 1922. You see the man, he's carrying a club, right? And wait a minute, what's the evidence for that? That's what they should have asked. What is the evidence for that? Well, one tooth, the whole tooth, with nothing but the tooth. And from that, they got the whole story, didn't they? Later, that tooth turned out to be a pig's tooth when they found more bones. Okay. Unfortunately, we see that happening. Scientists do make mistakes. It is easy to do it. But once you make a mistake, it's hard to get it out of the textbooks, by the way. Okay, Piltdown Man was a deliberate hoax. Somebody took the jaw of an ape, filed down the teeth, put it together with the skull of a modern man, colored everything nicely. Sure enough, they took the bait. And after a lot of deliberation, they came up with this drawing called him Piltdown Man. It took them 30 years to determine it was really a hoax. 30 years. So then you think they would have taken it out of textbooks, but for an additional 50 years, it was still in the textbooks, convincing people that evolution was fact. Okay. And in fact, guess what? That was clear back when. It's still in a few museums today. Okay, it's still in the museums. Don't know. Lucy, they found 40% of a skeleton. Notice one thing about the skeleton. No head, no feet, and no hands. But look at the museum exhibits and the textbook exhibits. Hands, feet, beautiful face for Lucy. Artwork. And kids looking at this don't know to ask the question, what's the evidence? By the way, they look at this complete pelvic girdle here. That they didn't have a complete pelvic girdle here at all. In fact, now they've been studying at least what they do have, and their conclusion is Lucy is not a she, it's a he. Because Lucy could never have given birth. Okay, that's the French Academy of Sciences say that Lucy should be removed from our family tree, for sure. Okay, be removed from it because of the evidence. Dr. Johansen, who put it together, got a lot of mileage out of considering that Lucy may have walked, or probably did walk upright because of the knee joint. You notice they didn't have a complete knee joint there. So when he was in lectures, what knee joint was he showing? Turns out he was showing the Hadar knee that was found 2 to 3 kilometers, let's say 2 miles away, okay? From the rest of the skeleton. Again, far enough away. Why did you put them together, somebody asked. Dr. Johansen said, well, they were similar, meaning he thought it was the same species of the Hadar knee, and he put a composite together. There's a lot of room for error when you do that, okay? Just have to understand that. All right. So much for Lucy right now. Are they doing that? Making composites? Here's one. Tim White made this reconstruction of Lucy and friends, okay? Afarensis from parts of, get this, several individuals. The crushed cranium. It talks about 107 separate pieces to put it together. Again, if you pick a piece here and a piece here and a piece here, use your preconceived ideas. You're going to put whatever characteristics it's going to resemble an ape that you want. Okay. All right. Now, here's another one. Time magazine reports. It talks about the shreds of a skull, but then the scientists are saying this toe bone proves the creature walked on 2 legs. Problem, the toe bone wasn't found with the rest of the skeleton. It was found 10 miles away. Again, assumed to be the same species. Okay, and that is reported by Dr. Johansen, who put the knee joint of Lucy together. He does not like it when somebody else does it. Okay. It's separated in time by several 100,000 years and 10 miles away. All right. Now, I don't have time to go into all the different things. There's a book called Contested Bones here. Okay. That particular book shows you the latest in human evolution, including Neanderthal, Lucy, Ida, Artie, Naledi. If you want to know more about it, go ahead and talk about or pick up that book and look at it and see what you see. All right. Another good book is Fossil Record. It's really a good book. Now we found that book for 5 cents, but not that one. This is much, much better. All right, much better with wonderful, beautiful photography of fossils in it. Okay. So what do the fossils indicate? I believe we see complexity everywhere. We see things staying put. We see distinct groups that fits with the creation and the fall and later the flood. But look at this fossil right here. Notice that one. That fossil isn't talking, it's eating. It's actually eating his lunch when both of these got trapped. What does that tell you? Sudden catastrophe upon them. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that tomorrow night, right here, same time, okay? And we're gonna see that there seems to be a lot of evidence of a lot of water, cataclysmic type of water. We're gonna be looking at that tomorrow. We're gonna look at different colored glasses or lenses that we're looking at the data with, okay? And we're gonna see if you have the right lens, you're gonna start seeing there's a lot of evidence in the rock layers and in the erosion that show a catastrophic type of pattern, all right? Now, I'm gonna review one other thing that Mary Jo pointed out yesterday. I think it's so important to think about it. Some people would look at the evidence of design. Oh, we can believe mutations, natural selection can work to explain it all, okay? And because we're taught to believe in naturalism, you are, I was, okay? You had to have a naturalistic explanation. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think we do. In fact, let's look at what a cell looks like. We always see these type of drawings of the primitive cell. Have you heard that before? The primitive cell or the simple cell. You know, and they show you the pieces and parts, but guess what? We have the DNA that's in that cell. That's not simple, is it? That's a computer program. 4-dimensional at least, okay? And that you can pick up and read in this DVD or see it in this DVD, the high-tech cell. All right. Now, we also notice something else in the cells. These little tiny, super microscopic machines. This one's an electric motor, and it works with 32, let's go back here. It goes with 32 proteins working together to be able to make energy for you. Okay, that's the synthase machine. There are over 20,000 of these nano machines operating in your body right now. 20,000 at least nano machines. How do you get it? Guess what? These are inside the cells. How do you get that machine? Well, first of all, you've got to take the DNA. You've got to split it to get the code necessary for the proteins that's going to end up in that machine. Now, you got to split it. You have to copy it. You got to snip the copy, take it into the ribosomes, these little polka dots on the outside of this. It's string of beads called amino acids, okay? That's what they are, string of amino acids. And then once you get that, it comes out of there into a folding machine, and it is folded to exactly the right shape in order to be able to be used. Are we good on that so far? You understand this? Okay, now, so we got to get that now into the right spot of the cell. Now, cells are small. You have trillions of them in your body. But these pieces are even smaller. And it's like me walking across the city of Minneapolis, okay? It'd be better if I had a UPS delivery system, right? And the cell has one. The cell has UPS working. They don't call it UPS, I don't think, but whatever. But this particular folded protein plus a bunch of other proteins are carried in this protein sac by this transport machine. We can call them UPS, Kinesis Transport. Okay, that's what it is. But anyhow, it takes a highway made inside the cell. This is a highway. It's called a microtubule. So the particular UPS delivery guy walks, he's actually running down this highway, delivers his sack of proteins, some of which are going to go right into the synthase machine. There are 32 specific ones, and these have to be precise. Okay? I mean, look at the complexity, and all of this is happening inside of that little tiny cell. No, Darwin was wrong when he said the cell was simple. He was wrong. He thought it was just a bag of protoplasm. That's all he thought. He did not know this extreme complexity that's going on. It's like a city and a manufacturing plants within that city and producing electric motors in this case. Okay. When I look at that, I see evidence of a major amount of design. Okay, all of this going on inside that little tiny cell. So what is the evolutionary naturalistic explanation for it? Here's Dr. Scott Todd. Okay, he actually spoke at a court case that said, no, we can't have intelligent design. We can't do that. We can't go there. Why? He says, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. Just catch what he said. You can't teach that it looks like it's designed. That's what he's trying to say right here. You can't, even if all the data looks like it. And in fact, you students, me included in the past, was taught nothing but what? Naturalism. Evolution, I say, is not really science. It's a belief system. It's posing as science and is the pillar of the naturalistic worldview. And if all the student is allowed to see is naturalistic evolution, a naturalistic origin of the universe, a naturalistic origin of life without God, they begin to believe it because that's all they ever hear. And in fact, they are then chained to this whole philosophy of naturalism. I don't like being put in a box. I don't think I'd like a ball and chain on me. I would rather be able to go where the evidence seems to be looking or leading. Okay. Now, when I look at that, I'm going to encourage each one of you. If you've been taught naturalism, you think, oh, well, what about this little detail? What about this little detail? I'm not worried about the little details. Let's look at the big picture. What are we seeing here? We're seeing an amazing amount of complexity and how it's put together that I don't think evolution or naturalistic explanations are going to supply. You might say, oh, I got this little idea here, but it doesn't work. You have to get everything together working. And so I would prefer to see freedom. Freedom. You know, it's a big world, isn't it? It's a big world. Do you want to be chained to naturalism, or can you be free to look at the evidence and go where it leads? Okay, tremendous freedom that we do see. You know, it's a big world out there, and let's not kick God out of it. Okay, if the evidence leads that way, let's go ahead and be free to worship God as we discover creation. And that's what my bottom line to you is. Keep an open mind and be willing to go there if that's where the evidence seems to be leading. And it does. So I'd also ask you to look at your assumptions, look at what you've been taught, and saying, am I operating strictly from the chains of naturalism? If so, break free. Arnold, come on up. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it so much. There's a mic.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, if you wish to have some information on the soft tissue dinosaur, Mark Armitage, Dr. Armitage has done a lot of work on it. Here are 2 scientific papers that you can look at. In fact, you can take a copy of those if you want, okay, and read them for yourself. They're out of my microscopy today. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Praise the Lord. That was awesome. So, yeah, Dr. Armitage, as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking, I met Dr. Armitage, who wrote those 2 papers, who did a lot of dinosaur soft tissue research and has published probably at least 6 articles in peer-reviewed, scientific journals on the topic. He said that once he recognized what he was looking at, which was basically evidence of blood clotting in the dinosaur bones, that was evidence of drowning. That once he had talked to someone who's an expert in looking at the blood clotting that's due to drowning, and he said once he was taught how to identify it, every single dinosaur bone that he is able to look out in the microscope, that is soft tissue, of up to 9 different species he's looked at, all show that they drowned from the blood clotting. And that was verified. He's actually collaborating with people that were criticizing him and telling him, I don't want you to collaborate with me. I don't want you to reference me. But then they started changing their tune once they saw his work. And so he's doing some good research, and we've got 2 articles here, 2 papers. And incidentally, he was fired from his job as running $1 million lab at Cal State. I think it was Fullerton in California. He was fired from running that $1 million lab wrongfully, and he actually won a lawsuit against the university for wrongfully terminating him, basically based on religious bias, because of the article that he published, the first one he published on dinosaur soft tissue. And that is the article has not been removed from the journal. It's not been proven false, but because there's such a stronghold of naturalism in science education, you can't question it. You'll lose your job. Dave lost his job as a math teacher at teaching at what school?
That was at what's now Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction, Colorado.
And he gave a proof. He didn't use the word God. He didn't use the word Jesus. He didn't quote the Bible. He just gave a proof in his class that the probability of getting life from non-life is 0. He was reprimanded after the lecture or the class and said, we don't like this, creationism stuff here, this religious stuff. But he hadn't mentioned God, Jesus, Bible, nothing like that. Just gave a proof that the probability of getting life from non-life is 0.
He was quite 0, but
it's basically 0. That's what he said. He did use the slight. I think he did say, I don't know what you call that in biology, but in statistics, we call that 0. So that's what he said. Like apparently he was taking a little jab or something, but he was shortly later terminated.
Yeah.
And the head of the department was boasting at a party when he got drunk that they fired him because he was a creationist. So this happens all the time. And he actually had great marks as a mathematician from his students, that they learned math well. He did a great job teaching. He was an excellent teacher, but because he didn't go along with the rest of everyone in saying it has to be naturalism, has to be naturalistic explanations, that's the only thing we're going to accept, evolution, then he got fired. So this happens all the time. You can check out the video. It's kind of a little older. It's called Expelled by Ben Stein. He's a popular, he used to be a popular Hollywood actor. He's a Jewish man. He did this documentary showing all these scientists that have been fired because they were creationists. So, and they were good scientists, top scientists, but there's still top scientists that are creationists that haven't been fired. They're still out there doing great research, like, Dr. John Sanford was referenced, the genetic entropy, the guy who, anyhow, get off that subject. But so we're going to get into Q&A here pretty quick. Before we do that, just quick, want to say that it boils down to a matter of faith. If you can't prove there's a God empirically in a lab, can't prove there isn't a God empirically in a lab. We admit our bias as believers in God, that we can't prove it, and then it's a matter of faith. But we just want those who think that science has proven there's no God to admit their bias, that they can't prove it, and it's faith, and things like that. And ultimately, for me, I got my degree in science here at this university, graduated in 2000. I bet you can't believe it, but I do have some wrinkles. I have 6 children, been married for 20 years. I'm 44, and 2 of my boys are in the back there. But yeah, I got my degree in fisheries and wildlife here, Bachelor of Science, was dyed in the wool evolution. But yeah, I met Jesus Christ when I was a junior here at school, heard the gospel for the first time, gave me hope. Thought, is this true? Could it be that this God is real? And I met him in my bedroom one night. My apartment is 1415 Southeast 8th Street, which is now being constructed into a bigger apartment building. But I was down there, I met him in my room, and my life's never been the same. I surrendered to him as Lord. I confessed my sins. I accepted him as Lord and Savior. I said, I believe you died for my sins. I believe you rose from the dead. And if you'll forgive my sins, I'll follow you forever. He's been in my life for 25 years or whatever it's been. And that's the church that led me to Christ. Now I'm the pastor of that church. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, so that's my journey. And then I went back to my evolutionary beliefs. And when the church challenged me and said, hey, evolution is not in the Bible. No, I'm not saying you can't be a Christian and believe in evolution, but if you want to be biblical, which Christians ideally would be biblical, because that's what tells us who Jesus is, tells us how to be saved, tells us our origins and what's coming in the future. It's our record of our faith is the Bible. It tells us that God created everything in 6 days, right? And the seventh day he rested, the heavens and the earth, the sea, everything in it. I read it at the beginning. And yeah, it says that through Adam, actually death came into the world. And, you could believe Adam is a metaphorical figure, some allegory or something. But people that study ancient Hebrew will tell you when you read Genesis, it wasn't written. The author of Genesis didn't write it like they thought they were writing legend. They wrote it like they were writing an account of what they believed to be true. Jesus said it was Moses that wrote that. But yeah, it's written to be history, tells us that through Adam, death came into the world. And if death came through Adam for us Christians, then how did Adam evolve through a process of death as a result of millions of years of struggle and decay and mutations and survival of the fittest? It doesn't fit. So I basically abandoned my belief in evolution. And I said, okay, God, give me some evidence. And I started getting exposed to these guys. Met them a long time ago. I know you still don't think I'm that
COVID.
You still don't think I'm that old, but anyway, met them like in 2000 or something. And I've been hearing them a lot, but it's taken me years and years to be deprogrammed from my evolutionary thinking, because like he said, you're taught from a little kid to believe that naturalistic processes is science. And that has to be the explanation for your origin. But as we showed tonight, as we showed last night, as we're going to show tomorrow night, Saturday night, there's a lot of things that you're not being taught in school and you're being misled. So I just want to encourage you. Real quick, says here in my little phone, says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and that the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's that simple. We call that good news, because you don't have to do anything to be right with God. All you have to do is accept Christ. The historical evidence for Christ is much greater than the evidence for evolution. I encourage you to put your faith in him. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Q&A. We can get back to your science questions if you want, or whatever questions you have, as long as they're fairly civil. And yeah, we want to limit the back and forth questions to maybe one follow-up question. If a person starts a question, Dave answers, or Mary Jo, and then they can have a follow-up question. But then we're going to give other people a chance to ask questions if you guys have, if there's enough questions. Otherwise, we can come back to that person if no one else is asking questions. And we would like to, since we brought these speakers in, the university paid a grant to bring them in. We want to make this about them answering questions rather than people sharing comments. So if you want comments, just wait till the end and you can have a dialogue with them personally. All right. So with that said, if you have questions, please raise your hand.
And I'd like Mary Jo to come on up, because every time we get a hard one, I turn it over to her. Yeah. And I promised you that I would answer a question. You can go first, but
I have two different questions, if that's okay. Totally different topics. So when you were starting the presentation, you were talking a lot about Darwin's prediction. What's the exact definition of what you guys are talking about when you say Darwin's prediction of evolution?
She's asking, what were the predictions that Darwin made about the fossil record? You started your
Yeah.
presentation with.
His biggest prediction was about the links, okay? And how the evolutions can proceed from simpler to complex. And we should find all kinds of links in the fossil record. In fact, that first quote I used says what we should find, but unfortunately geology at that point doesn't have them, okay?